What's up, y'all? It's your girl, Nicole in Gray. To be clear, hashtag the gray area. It is Monday and it is late o'clock, but it's still Monday. So, I am going live to try to refocus a little bit, come back to the Democratic candidates. So, that's why I'm on tonight because we're just over a week. What's up, sis? You up late too? I just watched my evening news, and it's time for us to get back a little focused because we're just a week away from the fourth Democratic national debate, and the field is not getting very much smaller. Everyone is still pushing their messaging, but they're not being heard a lot in the background of the impeachment inquiry, the Amber Geiger case, the new developments that have gone on in the Amber Geiger case, or associated with the Amber Geiger case, with the killing of the state's witness. So there are a lot of distractions right now and not much that we can do about, because I did a live last week about the Amber Geiger case and said, if you're not in that area, there are action steps that you can take following that case, because it showed us where our civic engagement really does make a difference in those cases, because there was a murder conviction. But beyond what you can do with your civic duty, there's not much to be done there. And the impeachment inquiry, and I'm going to say inquiry like the other news folks say, because I guess it's just too hard to say when you're rolling. But the impeachment inquiry, there's not really much that we can do as voters to move the needle on that thing. And to be honest, everybody is inviting Sister Pelosi to the cookout. And she's more than welcome to my cookout, because my cookout is all inclusive, but she better bring some sodas and, get with it. There's no plate fixing or anything for waiting for the political climate to be appropriate to do what you claim is best for the American people. So, there's not much that we can do on that impeachment inquiry other than watch it play out and hope that the Democrats are able to carry that thing to the finish and get the result that they want. But that brings us back to where we do have some power, and that's in our vote in choosing the next Democratic nominee. So the pool is still pretty large, and there's not a lot in policy that divides everyone, because on those major things, the candidates kind of stick together. So when you have immigration, the talk is pretty centric. There aren't too many outliers. When you have education, talk kind of runs across the board, that everybody believes in education, but you've got some kind of wild proposals, I'll say, and one that's the topic of why I'm here. But the people are kind of staying close together on the major issues. The main one that we saw coming out of the third debate that kind of separates folks, or the front runners at least, is the healthcare debate. Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are both championing for the Medicare for All. They're by themselves, and everyone else is pushing some type of public option, including Joe Biden, who still remains the front runner, even though they've got these talks about his son's propriety in his business dealings in the Ukraine and in China. So we've got some things to do here in deciding who gets the nomination. And so that's what brings me here in particular. We're getting back really hardcore with staying on them, seeing what they're talking about, and seeing how that benefits us. Because the purpose of our democracy, even though it's gotten a little bit, a little bit skewed, a lot bit skewed. It's a lot of mudslinging and a lot of just back and forth. But the benefit of our democracy is so that we can test the ideas of people who are putting them forth. So our two-party system really is supposed to not let all of the ideas be coming from one place or one perspective. It is to challenge those ideas and also to make sure that the person who wins that is from the other party is held accountable. So we have a benefit in our democratic field being so big in that we get a lot of ideas. We don't just get one or two ideas of how to do something. We got almost 20 ideas. So now's the time that we really get to listen to what they're saying and tease out the best ones so that we can instruct the Democratic National Committee what platform we want the nominee to stand on. That's the benefit of having so many people still in the field. I was with a friend of mine this weekend, and that question or that thought came up that it's just too many people. I'll wait till it's narrowed down. But that's the miss of the opportunity. The opportunity for you to really understand what's going on is when there are a bunch of people out there. And I make that point by saying Beto O'Rourke is no one's favorite. I mean, he may be folks' favorite, but I say that because he polls low amongst Democrats and he's a parity amongst Republicans. So I'm saying that relatively, not that he may not be favorites of many people, because he keeps getting up on stage. He's the favorite of some folks, enough to donate enough money to him to get him on the debate stage. So he's a favorite amongst some, but just in the national scheme of things, he's not a huge favorite. But for Houstonians, like me and you, sis, he talked about flood mitigation grants in the third Democratic National Debate. Now, that means something to us because he made a point to drive that point home when he talked about Houston seeing 3 500-year floods in 5 years, but that was before this last one, this Imelda. So we bring that total up to 4. So when we have a field this big, we get to zero in on stuff like pre-mitigation grants for flood areas. Because to be honest, what we have now doesn't work all that well because it comes through an agency that was made for emergencies. FEMA is called the Federal Emergency, whatever, MA, right? But it's for emergencies. It's not for something that happens with this type of consistency when you think about 3, 4 in 5 years. So we're going at the problem in a way that listening to someone who has a plan for it is a benefit, because even if he isn't our chosen candidate, we still get to go to our candidate and say, look, Beto O'Rourke talked about these pre-mitigation grants. What you got on those? Because that means something to us, because we constantly, every time it rains, checking on our people and turning around so we don't drown. So the benefit of having this wide of a pool is, even though there, folks range in popularity from carrying big numbers, relatively big numbers, more than a quarter, a little less than a quarter, but some aren't very popular, but they have really interesting ways of attacking our problems, and that's where we need to kind of zero our focus in and be ready for this next debate that's coming up in a week. So I launched the podcast on the 26th. I fell off a bit after the Democratic national debate because still the piece that I prepared for you guys, it'll be ready to upload. But the reason why, with those logistical issues with Imelda, it was just too long, I believe, for it to be processed through my paper. But I'll have it ready for you on the blog in the next day so that you can go through it and get up to speed about what the candidates had to offer in the last debate so that you're ready for the one that's coming up next week. But what brings me here is that in my podcast, this is it. This is where I'm going to be doing it from now. And on Mondays, it's going to be no different. It's To Be Clear, right? To Be Clear is commentary. And the intro for To Be Clear goes like this. To be clear, everything exists in the gray area. Almost nothing is black or white. Black people ain't even black, and white people are some shade of peach. And in every event, there is this side, that side, and then what really happened, because truth is relative based on perspective. And what I offer is information and entertainment so that we have a greater understanding and a deeper perspective. So tonight's topic is, I don't want nobody that's trying to out Trump for the nominee. Okay? To be clear, I don't want anyone trying to out Trump because I'm sick of Trump's ass. Why would I want somebody out trying to out Trump him? Now, I don't know if you have any idea of who this candidate might be, but it was something that I witnessed, or something that I did not witness at the third Democratic national debate, that led me to this conclusion. Senator Kamala Harris, or as I like to refer to her as Soror Unintended Consequences, because we're both members of the same sorority, but she uses that unintended consequences line quite a lot. There was something that I saw that I didn't see at the debate that made me question her sincerity. Now, initially when she came into the race, I thought that I would be able to identify with her because, I graduated from an HBCU like Senator Harris. I pledged AKA like Senator Harris. But initially, I found it difficult to connect with her because when she came on the scene, many of her answers were unprepared. There was a focus on how prepared Elizabeth Warren was, and the president made comments about her having all these plans. Well, Senator Harris was the opposite of that, and it came off as a pretty stark thing. It was pretty noticeable because my husband and I talked about it, and it was always, well, I'm going to talk about that, or that's the first thing I'm going to talk about when I get in the office, and we're going to do a discussion about that, and I'm going to have a meeting about that. And at first I said, well, I guess that's prudent, right, for you to wait until you're in the position so that you can get ideas. But that's not what a leader does, right? That's someone who does whatever is clever does. You go in and then you see who's talking about something, who got the most money, or who can make the most impact in your career, even possibly, and then you make your decision. Well, that rubbed me the wrong way, but I still reserved my commentary. When we got further into this process, the senator started to explain a little bit of her prosecutorial record, because that was another issue that I had out of the gate, was her prosecutorial record. And hey, mother dear, happy belated birthday. I had to break. Y'all, I had to break for that. But anyway, I was talking about Senator Kamala Harris and how I don't want a candidate who is going to try to out Trump. And that's what I see from Senator Harris. One, because when she initially came on the scene, she didn't have very many plans. Everything that she talked about, she said she would talk about later, or she would meet with folks to develop a plan later. And that stood out a lot in the beginning because she was going head to head with someone who had a plan for everything, who is Senator Warren. Well, the second observation that I made with regard to Senator Harris is that her prosecutorial record was not one that matches what she claims to stand for now. She claims to be progressive and on social issues. Like, she came out early in support of legalizing marijuana. Now, that's not something that you really even have to do on a national stage coming out in that position, because states can do what they want and people are okay with the progression that things are going. That's not a major topic. That in Pew Research data, that does not come anywhere in the top 20 of concerns among Americans. But it was something that she came out in the beginning with, something that her own dad rebuked, and that it drew some questions for me, because I wonder what brought about the change from the record that she had as a prosecutor, not only prosecuting drug offenses but low-level ones. And there was just a big contrast, and she's talked about it some through her campaign, but not very much to great satisfaction. In the third Democratic national debate, she and Amy Klobuchar were both questioned about their records when they talked about race and basically over incarceration. And she said then that her record is being distorted and that she always tried to fight for rights of underrepresented in her position as the prosecutor. But that just really doesn't. Well, I'll, with all fairness, I will give the examples that she gave, because these are her credits. She pushed for having more transparency in the police department, having the body cameras on at all times. She also initiated some diversion programs in California, which are, I wrote about the Harris County District Attorney's diversion program, which does have a great impact in the Black community, or because the Black community is disproportionately impacted when there aren't these pretrial diversion programs, simply because there isn't the funds there that other people have in order to get their own lawyer for pretrial results. So she has had some credits where her facts did check in the third Democratic national debate about the things that she did, but it's not fair to say that any prosecutor works on behalf of the underserved. That's just not the reality of how prosecutions work in America. But beyond that, beyond her prosecutorial record, because she still has some explaining to do, that the explanation that she gave in the third Democratic national debate won't put that issue to rest for her. She did a good job in handling it, probably I would say better than Amy Klobuchar did with the question, but still she'll have to answer for her record. But that's not what did it. What did it for me was what I observed at the third Democratic national debate from Soror Unintended Consequences. It's Senator Kamala Harris. Now, being an AKA and a graduate of a historically black college or university myself, the natural, what's up, cuz? The natural inclination for me, I expected to see activity of the AKAs on Texas Southern's campus. I expected to see activity of Alpha Kappa Omega, the biggest grad chapter here in Houston that supports Gamma Psi, the Texas Southern chapter. I expected to see activity from those groups that she's associated with, going out and reaching out to members of the underserved community and showing them that there is no cause to be disenfranchised. We're here. We are registering you to vote. We are talking to you about our platform. We are encouraging you to get on board with us so that we can take your issues to the powers that be, take it to the White House. That's where I'm going. But there was none of that. There was none of that. There was no showing of the AKAs. There was no huge voter registration drive. And I learned that this is just a conversation that I had with someone else, that she was trying to get contact with folks on the campus. Now, an invitation from a presidential candidate is not one that's ignored. So if she tried to get the AKs involved, they would have been involved gladly. If she tried to engage the community to register folks in and around the Texas Southern University area, she would have had tons of people willing, and they would have done it. But there wasn't that. And it stood out to me. It stood out very sorely to me because, like I said, I identify with her as an AKA, as a graduate of an HBCU, as a lawyer. I didn't see myself in that movement. I didn't see myself not engaging that campus because it was chosen for a reason, because it is an HBCU, and the topic toward the end of the year is going to turn towards HBCUs again, because there's large amounts of funding that is on the table for them. And this brings me to my last point about, I don't want a candidate that's going to out-Trump Trump. And I believe that's what we have in Senator Kamala Harris. Now, this last point about HBCUs, if you all recall, on the third Democratic National Debate, there was a conversation about education. And at the end of that conversation about education, Senator Harris squoze in that she was going to pledge $2 trillion to HBCUs. Houseway. All I can say is houseway. How do you plan to pledge $2 trillion to historically black colleges and universities when, one, you have to have the conversation of what they are with some folks? Because even though people know U of H, University of Houston, Cougars, go Cougs, people shout go Cougs all over this country. University of Houston is widely known. People do not know, or did not know until that international debut for Texas Southern University, that the two schools were created from the same bill. It was a school for blacks and a school for whites, right across the street. So, and then they morphed into the universities that they are, but the institutions are the same age. they but they are not, they do not have the same level of recognition. So I brought that up to say that first, in order to convince folks that $2 trillion is what you plan to pledge to these universities, you got to first tell them what they are. Tell them that they exist. And then in that same conversation, after you introduce them to some folks, then you have to explain their relevancy. Some people still have a view that since Brown versus the Board of Education, which allowed black students to go to school with whites, that historically black colleges and universities are no longer necessary. So in that conversation that one has to have of giving these large sums of money to these institutions, they first have to tell them what they are. Then they have to convince them of their continued relevancy. After the continued relevancy conversation, then you get to the money. Now, we're not talking about the $60 billion that she pledged before she got to the debate stage, because there was a switch up. Until she got to the third Democratic National Debate, all the way up until she got to the third Democratic National Debate, she had committed to pledging $60 billion to HBCUs. Now, $60 billion is a fantastic amount of money, especially when you think about the education budget for 2019. The whole education budget for 2019 for the U.S. is just under $60 billion. So initially, her pledge was phenomenal. I mean, and it wasn't, she wasn't out there by herself. Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren each have come out and said that they would pledge $50 billion. And Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg has also made an annual pledge to HBCUs. So, and it's a lower amount, something like $3 billion, but still that's an annual pledge. And so the candidates are talking about HBCUs and their funding, and I've talked about their relevancy before, and I'll continue because the conversation we'll need to continue to have, because candidates are treating HBCUs somewhat like a ticket to the black vote, especially with the president also attending the HBCU week and pledging his own funding, making his own funding pledges. So the candidates are really zeroing in. So we have to pay attention there. But with the pledge like what Senator Kamala Harris has made, we have to test the veracity of it. We have to say, how are you going to do this? Is this something that we can believe you can get done in the climate that we have, where bipartisan efforts for things that we all want stall out? How do you plan to convince folks to give $2 trillion to HBCUs, especially when you didn't even reach out and connect? How are they supposed to reach out and connect? And that was home for you. So you have to. I came on particularly because after that debate, I wanted to share that because that was something that wasn't seen, but it was something that I did observe. Now, this is to be clear. I don't want no candidate that's trying to out-Trump Trump. And that to me is Senator Kamala Harris, because she started off on the scene without any plans. Meaning, I'll go however is clever. Then, she continues to talk about her record, but not giving anything satisfactory. Then, all of her talk, these pledges to HBCUs, they're not something that really sounds feasible. And she's not giving any direction on how she plans to get these done. And there's one last thing, and this one is one that I think Joe Biden will probably flesh out for us in this next debate if the topic comes up. In the gun violence and gun control conversation in the third debate, Senator Harris, all of the candidates that were on stage agreed to an assault weapons ban. Now, the position is popular among Americans. They're just most Americans just do not want folks to have to turn in the guns that they already have. So everyone on stage was in favor of an assault weapons ban. But Senator Harris was the one who took that favor and took it to another level. And it was she said that she would go in on her first day in office and ban assault weapons by executive order. Now, former Vice President Joe Biden told her outright, you can't do that. And she said, don't say that, Joe. Just say, yes, we can, kind of in an Obama style. And the former vice president said, that's unconstitutional. That's some Trump shit. Just straight up. Willing to do the arguably wrong thing for the right reason. Right? Because executive orders are for emergencies. And they're not to usurp the power of Congress, who has the power to make the laws here. So executive orders have been abused before. And if you guys have seen some of my commentary before, you know how I feel about the use of executive orders. The founders never intended for executive orders to bestow upon a president total power, right? Power to bypass Congress for its functions. And that's what she said she would do on the debate. You're not even there yet, and you saying that on day one I'm going to go in and break the rules. I can't get with Soror Unintended Consequences. She is not polling very high. It's unlikely that she will survive, the primaries and make it into any runoff. But I just caution about her presence in this primary and her continued presence in this election. Listen carefully to what she has to say. A lot of it is a rally of the base or pandering to the black vote, because you get on the debate stage at Texas Southern University and that's when your contribution to HBCUs changed from $60 billion, which was already out of sight, to $2 trillion. And then no mention of how that's going to get done. And then you tied it in, just the way she tied it in, it was to some talk at the end of the education talk where she said if students have more black teachers, they have greater opportunities for success. I'm not sure exactly how that equates to giving $2 trillion to HBCUs, but that was the argument. So we have to keep our ears open for what she has to say, especially if that is your preferred candidate. I just caution, listen to what she has to say and ask yourself, is she the one that can go in and get the things that I want done? But keep those points that I made in mind. She's a flip-flopper. She is a flip-flopper. She is not exactly who she says she is. From my observation, going onto the campus and seeing how she did not have any major involvement with the organizations that she has close affiliations with. So I had to come on tonight to do my To Be Clear with you guys. I'm going to be coming back on live tomorrow. It won't be this late. I believe it's going to be at 9. But I had to come on today because I didn't make my 9. But I said I was going to make it before the night was over. And I made it. And you guys join me because y'all crazy too and y'all up. Who knew? Anyway, it's been a pleasure. That's Senator Kamala Harris, the topic for tonight. Tomorrow, we talking about Uncle Joe. Join me. Later, y'all.